Step back, doors closing.
In the 1950s and 60s, many cities across the United States experienced significant urban congestion. New freeways allowed workers to drive downtown to the office during the day and return to a spacious single-family home in the suburbs in the evening. While many cities address automobile congestion by constructing more freeways, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C., three regions facing significantly bad congestion, decided to alleviate traffic by constructing urban rapid transit systems. Each of these regions proposed ambitious systems in the 1960s, with operation planned to commence in the 1970s. However, each also faced funding and political roadblocks, eventually delaying construction. BART and MARTA each had to remove significant branches of its originally proposed systems, but unlike its siblings in California and Georgia, the Washington Metro was largely constructed as proposed. In fact, when the original system was completed in 2001, the total length actually increased from 97 miles of track to 103 miles. However, this does not mean that the Metro faced zero eliminations throughout its rocky development history. In this video, we will take a look at every deleted Metrorail station. First, it is worth discussing what qualifies as a deleted Metro station. For the purpose of this video, I am considering stations that were officially included within WMATA's adopted regional system at some point in the past, but were later removed. For those unfamiliar with WMATA's adopted regional system, here is a brief explanation. In 1966, the state of Maryland, Commonwealth of Virginia, and the United States Congress ratified the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Regulation Compact, which created WMATA and empowered the new organization to, quote, develop and adopt, and from time to time review and revise a mass transit plan for the Washington region. WMATA obliged, and on March 1, 1968, the Transit Authority's Board of Directors adopted a plan for a rapid rail system containing 82 stations and stretching 97 miles across the region. This became known as the Adopted Regional System, or ARS for short. The ARS has been modified hundreds of times since its original adoption in March 1968, sometimes with major changes such as the addition of a new rail line, or other times with mundane modifications such as decreasing the number of park and ride spots at a particular station. Therefore, for this video, a station must have been officially included in the ARS previously to count as a deleted station. This means that, unfortunately, the fabled Georgetown Metrorail station will not be discussed since it was never incorporated into the ARS to begin with. First, let's take a look at the only branch to be deleted from the Metrorail system. When Metro alignments were being planned, local officials had to decide where to put the terminus of one of the rail lines in Fairfax County. Two locations were seriously considered. After heading west from Alexandria, the line could either continue west to Springfield, Virginia, or turn south to Franconia, Virginia. Both alignments would parallel pre-existing railroad tracks, simplifying land acquisition, and either could be constructed with direct access to the Beltway. The proposed stations were only 2 miles apart from each other, so whichever was selected could serve both communities reasonably effectively. The only controversial aspect of this decision involved the hypothetical extension of the rail line in the far future. If the Springfield location were selected, it would make it easier to eventually extend rail service to Burke, while if the Franconia location were selected, it would allow for future expansion to Lorton. Ultimately, in 1968, local officials adopted to split the baby by including branches to both Springfield and Franconia in the adopted regional system. However, anyone who is familiar with the current metro system knows that this isn't the end of the story. In 1974, local residents were beginning to question the plan, citing a desire to concentrate development around a single terminal rather than having two activity areas within close proximity and diluting the area's development potential. Metro heeded these concerns, and on September 20th, 1974, the board hired Philadelphia-based consulting firm Wallace, McHarg, Roberts, and Todd to study possible revisions to the Metrorail system in the area of Franconia and Springfield. By November 1974, the consulting firm concluded its initial study and briefed the WMATA board on a proposal to delete the western spur to Springfield. Under this plan, Springfield Station would be moved to the southern branch located just south of the Washington Beltway, and the Franconia Station would be moved a mile further south to the proximity of Springfield Mall. The overall number of stations would not change, and the total miles of track would be about the same, decreasing slightly. In essence, the proposal suggested that rather than having two short branches with one station apiece, the infrastructure should be consolidated into one slightly longer branch with two stations. The idea had lots of logic behind it. Under the ARS plan, the number of trains serving each terminal was split in half. Trains were scheduled to depart Springfield or Franconia Station every 8 minutes. By eliminating one of the branches and consolidating train service around a single terminal, trains could depart every 4 minutes, effectively cutting the time that passengers would wait on the platform in half. Also, projections suggested that ridership would improve under this new plan, increasing from an estimated 13,500 passengers per day to 19,200 passengers per day. Since many passengers at the Springfield station were modeled to be park and ride commuters, relocating the station 2 miles to the east was not expected to dissuade many of the projected riders. Alternatively, by relocating the Franconia station a mile to the south, it would provide a more enticing transit option to commuters from points south in Fairfax County, such as Newington and Lorton. And the proposed alternative would save an estimated $300,000 in construction costs versus the original plan, since the track mileage was a little bit shorter and infrastructure at the junction between the two branches was no longer needed. The WMATA board agreed with this justification and directed the consulting firm to produce a final report, which was completed the following February. On December 4th, 1975, the board officially modified the ARS to delete the spur to Springfield and relocate the Springfield and Franconia stations as proposed by the consultants. The board said that it would design the route to accommodate a future spur to Springfield, but from all my research, I've been unable to find any evidence that this was even considered when the line was eventually constructed in the 1990s. Despite being adopted in December 1975, the system maps for opening day the following spring were already printed and did not reflect the modified alignment. The branch was officially removed from system maps starting on July 1st, 1977, when the Blue Line opened from Stadium Armory to National Airport. So that was the only branch that was deleted from the Metrorail system, but there are also a handful of stations that were removed from lines that eventually got built. The first two stations to be deleted came shortly after the original adoption of the ARS. Just over a month after the WMATA board approved plans for a rail system in Washington, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. Immediately after, civil unrest and riots occurred along 14th Street Northwest and in Shaw, ultimately resulting in 13 dead, thousands injured, 900 businesses destroyed, and millions of dollars in property damage. Civil rights leader Walter Fauntleroy saw the recently approved subway system as a tool in revitalizing these communities following the riots. And fortunately, he was perfectly positioned to see these efforts through. In 1968, Fauntleroy was the vice chairman of the Washington City Council. He was also a member of the WMATA Board of Directors representing Washington, D.C., and he was the head of the Model Inner City Community Organization, which aimed to promote urban development in Shaw without relocating existing residents and businesses. As the intersection of these three organizations, Fauntleroy was able to shepherd approval for modifying the metro alignment from the city government, the transit agency, and the local community. In the original ARS, the Mid-City line was planned to head north on 7th Street from Gallery Place, turn west at Mount Vernon Square, and travel underneath Massachusetts Avenue until 13th Street. The line would then head north up to Kansas Avenue. Fauntleroy wanted to modify the route to serve the neighborhoods hardest hit by the riots. Under his plan, the route would stay underneath 7th Street all the way until U, where it would then turn west. At 14th Street, the line would turn north and continue. Stations in Columbia Heights and U Street would be relocated, while stations would be added in Shaw and Mount Vernon Square. The station at Logan Circle would be removed since the new alignment would not serve that area. The new route was projected to cost up to $13 million more than the original, since it required a quarter-mile of additional track, sharper curves, and a net addition of one station to the system. To further eliminate the budget gap, in May of 1969, the WMATA board proposed the removal of the Petworth station at Sherman Circle. This would save about $6 million, which would help cover the increased cost of the reroute on 14th Street. WMATA said that it would put the Petworth station back into the system if construction came in under budget or if funds were otherwise made available by another source. At a public hearing in March of 1970, nearly everyone supported the reroute, with the only objection coming from the Petworth Citizen Association opposing the removal of Petworth. On June 12, 1970, the WMATA board officially modified the alignment, resulting in the deletion of the Logan Circle and Petworth stations from the ARS. In the end, the new route cost $3 million more than the original plan, which was fully covered by the District of Columbia. The Petworth station was never built, but in a way it lives on today in the metro system. In 1989, the Metro Board voted to append Petworth to the Georgia Avenue station, which today is called Georgia Avenue Petworth. The next deleted station is Oklahoma Avenue, which would have been an elevated station located on the blue and orange lines north of Stadium Armory. However, this station was initially deleted due to a committed movement among nearby residents, orchestrated almost single-handedly by a 68-year-old retired librarian named Evelyn Beam. Beam lived at 524 Oklahoma Avenue Northeast for over 35 years. When she heard the plans for the station at Oklahoma Avenue, she was immediately outraged. Beam had a laundry list of concerns, including vibrations from the trains, the potential parking structure blocking the view of Kingman Island, increased traffic from commuters and buses serving the station, and possibility of commercial developers attempting to rezone the neighborhood. WMATA's first public hearing in August 1970 had only 3 people show up, suggesting to the agency that this segment would be uncontroversial. But by the second public hearing less than a month later, Beam rallied 125 people to attend and pushed for the station to be moved underground or eliminated entirely. WMATA was willing to address some of their concerns, offering to shift the rail line further east, decreasing the impact of noise and vibrations on the Oklahoma Avenue row houses. But Metro planners estimated that the cost of moving the segment underground would be about $46 million and would have to be borne entirely by the city of D.C. Residents of the Kingman Park neighborhood unsuccessfully attempted to lobby Congress for direct appropriations for the additional funding. WMATA leadership quickly realized that a battle here would effectively delay the entire opening of the rail line and decided to just give in to the community's demands. On April 25, 1972, the WMATA Board of Directors officially deleted the Oklahoma Avenue station from the ARS, which saved the system an estimated $12 million. Today, the blue, orange, and silver lines travel above ground 500 feet east of Oklahoma Avenue without a station, but still loud enough to hear from the neighborhoods and blocking the view of Kingman Island. Next up, let's return back to the Springfield station in Fairfax County. When we last left off, Metro voted to delete the branch to Springfield while migrating the station to the Franconia branch. However, there's more to the story for the Springfield station. In January 1977, President Jimmy Carter was inaugurated, and he was skeptical in the cost-effectiveness of new urban mass transit systems, particularly Metro. In a handwritten note to his Secretary of Transportation, Brock Adams, President Carter wrote, "I suspect that many of the rapid transit systems are grossly overdesigned." Secretary Adams followed his boss's lead, requiring an alternative analysis for all metro routes not under construction at that point, as a condition for receiving federal funding. This included the entire Greenbelt line, the Branch Avenue line beyond Anacostia Station, the Vienna line beyond Ballston Station, and the entire Franconia line. The Glenmont line north of Silver Spring had not begun construction yet, but received a special exemption after Montgomery County Executive James Gleason threatened to withhold all county funding earmarked for WMATA if the segment were not built. The Franconia branch was widely seen as the most expendable branch of the system and the most threatened to be removed by potential alternative analysis. However, Joe Alexander, a member of the WMATA Board of Directors and the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors representing Franconia, fought hard to ensure the rail line was not deleted. 3 alternatives were considered for this segment. Build the line as planned to Franconia, build it to Franconia but eliminate the Springfield station, or eliminate the whole route altogether and supplement the corridor with commuter rail. Alexander supported the second option as a strategic concession to fend off the potential elimination of the entire line. He figured many nearby residents could travel to neighboring Franconia or Van Dorn Street stations, and that a line with 2 stations is better than no rail line at all. By May of 1978, a task force comprising of officials from WMATA, the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and a regional transportation study board reviewed the alternative analysis and issued recommended actions. The general 100-mile system was largely intact. However, the task force recommended that the Springfield station be deleted and the former Franconia station would be renamed to Franconia Springfield as it remains today, which served as a symbolic olive branch to show that the terminus could serve both communities. Surprisingly, unlike every other station in this video, it appears that the Springfield station was never officially removed from the ARS, So technically, one could argue that a separate Springfield station is still part of Washington's mass transit plan in the present day. Obviously, WMATA has no intention of ever building this station, and the most recent reference to Springfield was in 1979. The final two deleted metro stations also relate to the 1977 alternatives analysis. When the analysis of the Branch Avenue segment was being conducted, engineers discovered that the geology under the Anacostia River near the planned alignment was unfavorable for constructing a tunnel. If the tunnel were moved further to the west, the rail line would be easier and cheaper to construct. The D.C. government saw this as an opportunity to serve the Congress Heights neighborhood and proposed a new alignment through southeast Washington that would relocate 2 stations further west. Prince George's County followed suit and proposed deleting the 3 stations at Naylor Road, Suitland, and Branch Avenue, and replacing them with 3 new stations at Southern Avenue, St. Barnabas Road, and Rosecraft Raceway. This proved more controversial than the D.C. counterpart, with residents and local officials near Branch Avenue fighting to maintain the original alignment and suggesting that the change was made under pressure from wealthy and politically connected landowners near Rosecroft. In disputes like this, WMATA had a policy of deferring to the preferences of the local government involved. And after holding public hearings for both alignments, and each receiving strong support, Prince George's County officially selected the Rosecroft route in March 1980, with the WMATA board quickly voting to modify the ARS to include the new alignment. However, on February 21, 1981, Judge Norman Ramsey of the U.S. District Court for Maryland ruled that the public hearings were invalid because insufficient public notice had been given. An injunction was filed preventing any construction except for the original route, which contained the unfeasible geologic conditions. After several rounds of appeals and more public hearings, WMATA decided to combine various aspects from Rosecroft and Branch Avenue alignments. The line would follow the Rosecroft route under the Anacostia River through Congress Heights and to the Southern Avenue station. It would then turn northeast parallel to the district line until it reached Naylor Road Station, and then would continue southeast to Branch Avenue. On December 13, 1984, the WMATA board approved this route, reinstating the Naylor Road, Suitland, and Branch Avenue stations to the adopted regional system and officially deleting St. Barnabas Road and Rosecraft Raceway. In addition to these 6 deleted stations, there are also 2 stations that were deleted from one branch and ultimately added to another. First is the Kenilworth Avenue station, which was originally going to be on the blue and orange lines before it was relocated to just serving the orange line at Minnesota Avenue. In 1971, the D.C. Office of Housing concluded a year-long report on maximizing the economic development of metro stations in Northeast Washington. The report recommended moving the Anacostia River crossing from Benning Road to East Capitol Street, and then also relocating the stations on the Orange Line branch from Kenilworth Avenue and Dean Avenue to Parkside and Eastern Avenue. The WMATA General Manager, Jackson Graham, said agency staff were still analyzing the proposal, but suggested that his staff supported the station relocations, but not the bridge relocation. The following year, on June 15, 1972, the WMATA board voted to modify the ARS and relocate the Kenilworth Avenue station to Minnesota Avenue. Next is the Telegraph Road Station in Alexandria, which was originally going to be on the Franconia branch, but was moved to the Huntington branch and renamed Eisenhower Avenue. By 1972, Metro was finalizing the alignment through Alexandria, facing much opposition from local leaders. One flashpoint related to the location of a rail yard. WMATA needed to construct a rail yard near the junction between the Franconia and Huntington branches in Alexandria. However, the proposed site near the present-day Cameron Run Regional Park was opposed by the Alexandria City Council because they wanted to preserve that area for future industrial development. Metro agreed to decrease the planned size of the rail yard and move it half a mile east. However, the new location would have been right at the Telegraph Road station, limiting development potential there. To address this second-order impact, Alexandria suggested moving the Telegraph Road station to Eisenhower Avenue, which received support from local developer Hubert Hoffman, who offered to donate the land for the relocated station. Soon after the modified alignment was approved by the Alexandria City Council, the WMATA board voted to modify the adopted regional system and officially relocate the Telegraph Road station to Eisenhower Avenue. Finally, there have been many stations that were moved from one location to another on the same branch. Depending on your perspective, one could argue that these stations were deleted and then immediately reinstated at a different location. So for the sake of completeness, I will mention them here in this video. Most of them don't have particularly interesting stories, so I will run through them quickly. Many of these are related to other changes that have already been discussed. For instance, when the Springfield branch was eliminated, the Franconia station was moved from its original location at Franconia Road, a mile south to near Springfield Mall. Similarly, when the Green Line was modified, Anacostia Station was moved 2/3 of a mile southwest from the intersection of Minnesota Avenue and Good Hope Road to its current location at Howard Road straddling 295. Additionally, the Congress Heights Station was moved a mile and a half southwest from the intersection of Alabama Avenue at Good Hope Road to the intersection of Alabama Avenue at 13th Street. When the Anacostia River Tunnel was shifted west, Navy Yard Station was shifted 1/3 of a mile west from the intersection of M and 5th Streets to the intersection of M and 1st Street southeast to allow for the new tunnel alignment. When the Kenilworth Avenue Station was moved to Minnesota Avenue, the Deanwood Station was moved half a mile northeast from Dean Avenue to Polk Avenue, so it wouldn't be as close to Minnesota Avenue Station. As mentioned earlier, when the Green Line was relocated through Mid-City, the Columbia Heights Station was moved 1/10 of a mile west to match the new alignment down 14th Street. Additionally, the U Street Station maintained approximately the same location, but was rotated perpendicularly to fit the new alignment down U Street. The Georgia Avenue Station was moved 4/10 of a mile south from the intersection of Georgia and Kansas Avenues to the intersection of Georgia and New Hampshire Avenues. This was necessitated indirectly because the new 14th Street alignment and the geometry of the DC street grid. Unlike 13th Street, 14th Street doesn't intersect Kansas Avenue. Therefore, in order to maintain the route underneath Kansas Avenue, the subway tunnel would have to go under several residential city blocks, possibly destroying homes. WMATA decided to reroute the alignment through Park Road and New Hampshire Avenue, traveling from Columbia Heights to Fort Totten. This required the Georgia Avenue Station to move further south. Several stations on the Orange Line were also moved. West Falls Church was moved half a mile east along the median of I-66, from just west of the intersection with Route 7 to the intersection with the planned Dulles Access Road extension. This new location allowed WMATA to construct direct access roads from Route 7 and I-66 to the station, soothing fears from local residents about increased traffic. Fairly soon after the ARS was adopted, Ballston Station was moved a tenth of a mile east from Glebe Road to Stewart Street, and Courthouse Station was moved a quarter mile to the west from Road Street to Courthouse Road. The Capitol South Station was originally going to be located at South Capitol Street with a direct connection to the Rayburn and Longworth House office buildings. Also, this location would have a monumental view of the U.S. Capitol Dome as passengers exited the station. This was rejected by George Stewart, the architect of the Capitol at the time, citing security and aesthetic concerns. The station was relocated a tenth of a mile east from South Capitol to First Street. Congress Heights on the Blue Line was moved 4/10 of a mile northeast from the intersection of Southern Avenue and Central Avenue to the intersection of Southern Avenue and East Capitol Street. This was done since the rail alignment was moved from Central Avenue to East Capitol Street. WMATA planners claim that East Capitol Street is a straighter and wider path, making construction less disruptive and cheaper. Braddock Road was originally planned to be located a quarter mile north of its current location at Monroe Avenue. Alexandria leaders did not support the initial site because they believed it had limited development potential since the train tracks served as a natural barrier and prevented access from the west. The city of Alexandria commissioned a study to move the alignment underground beneath Washington Street in Old Town, which would have greater development potential. But WMATA planners were frustrated that the leaders waited so long to propose this change, since it would have been cost prohibitive at this point. To address the concerns about the Monroe Avenue station, WMATA agreed to move the station a quarter mile south to its present location at Braddock Road. Here, an existing tunnel underneath the train tracks would assist with passenger connectivity. Huntington Station was moved about 3/4 of a mile west from the area of Richmond Highway to the area of North Kings Highway. Branch Avenue Station was moved 3/4 of a mile east, presumably to allow more room for a rail yard and park and ride facilities. Ironically, this new location was farther away from the actual Branch Avenue. Waterfront was moved 4/10 of a mile west from the intersection of M Street and South Capitol to the intersection of M Street and 4th Street Southwest. West Hyattsville Station was relocated half a mile east to be closer to the Queens Chapel Shopping Center. This came following a study from WMATA, which found this new location would garner more riders, impact less parkland, and dislocate fewer households. The Greenbelt Station was moved a mile northeast from Greenbelt Road to just south of the Capitol Beltway. This would allow for a multimodal transfer to a commuter station and direct access to the Capitol Beltway. Also, the rail yard would be constructed north of the Beltway with this new location, allowing for more space. Finally, the Medical Center Station was moved a mile south from Pooks Hill Road to its current location between NIH and Walter Reed. Soon after the original ARS was approved, WMATA and Montgomery County both agreed that a station closer to the National Institutes of Health and the DoD facilities would be better for serving commuters. However, there was a disagreement between WMATA, Montgomery County, and the federal government on where to locate it. Battery Lane, Wilson Drive, Cedar Lane, and South Drive were all studied, with the location at South Drive and Rockville Pike ultimately being selected. So there you go. There have been 1 deleted branch, 6 deleted stations, 2 stations relocated from one branch to another, and 20 stations that were relocated along the same branch. I hope you enjoyed this opportunity to look back at what could have been. Which of these stations do you wish were not deleted? Alternatively, are there any existing stations that you wish had been deleted before it were built? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below.